Good morning, all you beautiful people, beautiful souls. This is a tune by Candor and Ebb. Yes, say yes. Life keeps happening every day. Say yes. When opportunities come your way, you can't start wondering what to say. You never win if you never play. Say yes. There's mink and marigolds right outside, and long white Cadillacs you can ride, but nothing's gained when nothing's tried. Say yes. Don't say why. Say why not. What lies beyond what is not. Yes, I'll touch. Yes, of course. Yes, how nice. Yes, I'd happily. Thank you very much. Yes, oh yes. There's lots of chaff, but there's lots of wheat. Say yes. You might fall down as you cross the street, but on the other hand, you might greet that handsome stranger you long to meet. Say yes. Don't say why. Say why not. What lies beyond what is not. So what? Say yes. Yes, I'll walk. Yes, I'll look. Yes, I'd love to do such and such. Yes, I'll try. Yes, I'll dare. Yes, I'll fly. Yes, I'll share. Yes, I'd happily. Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You can't look back on a chance that's lost. Say yes. The dice mean nothing unless they're tossed. The throw is usually worth the toss. The hope of summer denies the frost. Say yes. Yes, I am. Yes, I'll be. Yes, I'll go. Oh, yes.
Can you feel the zeal? All right, that's better. Our power this month is, in case you hadn't guessed, the power of zeal. Zeal is represented by the color orange. I see some of you are wearing orange, and thank you, Leslie Godden, for the orange flowers she's been keeping. If you haven't noticed, she's the one who's been keeping our flowers current with the right color. So yes. The power center for zeal is in the back of the head. And the disciple who represents zeal, according to Charles Fillmore, when he created the 12 powers of man back in 1920-something, 4, I think, is Simon the Canaan. Now, some of you may be wondering, was he from Canaan? How many of you know what the word Canaan actually means? It's actually Canaanæan. What is it? How many of you know what it actually means? Oh, good, I can make something up. No. It was a word that didn't denote where he was from. It denoted what political party he belonged to. The political party would later be called the Zealots. And so Simon was called, in later times, Simon the Zealot. And I'll get more into what exactly that was in a few minutes. But we are working this year to bring in the divine feminine energy of our 12 powers. And what is the feminine energy of zeal? Well, the masculine energy is as Charles Fillmore defined it, represents the motivation and the desire to accomplish great things. And throughout human history, zeal has meant to be zealous for God, or zealous for your nation, or zealous for your empire, to want to conquer and accomplish great things, build huge machinery and all of that. That's great. That's part of it. But what about the feminine energy of zeal? The feminine energy of zeal is the motivation and desire to create new life in ourselves, in our world, new life, in new ways of growing and evolving and being. And so we are working to energize that side of the power of zeal. But in order to do that, let's get a better understanding of where we're coming from in history. As I said, Simon was a Canaanian. It's kind of a hard word to remember how to say. And he was not from Cana or Canaan. He was a zealot. And that was a political party, as I said. And it was founded by Judas the Galilean, who led a revolt against Rome in Israel in the year 6 CE. Now think about that. Jesus would have been a little boy. We often don't think about the times and the culture that these people lived in. In the year 6, Jesus was probably somewhere between 6 and 10 years old. We don't know for sure, but somewhere in that area. And these people experienced this. They lived in a war-torn country, conquered by a foreign empire. And so these zealots were very much about overthrowing Rome, but not just because they were angry about being conquered. The thing they were really angry about was the fact that Rome required tribute paid to the god emperor. And of course, in Judaism, you don't pay tribute to another god. So that's what they were fighting about. They were called zealots because they were zealous for the law of Moses. It said there is only what? One God. And it is not the emperor of Rome. These people became the army later on after Jesus lived, and the last of them were the ones who held out at Masada for so many years, if you're familiar with that event in history. Now, we do not know if Simon was an active member of this party or not. He may simply have been, kind of on the fringes of it, supporting it, but not really part of it. But Jesus recognized something in Simon. He recognized this energy of being filled with zeal. And I imagine as Simon spent time with Jesus, he began to shift his perspective a little bit and still maintain this power, this zeal for the teachings of Jesus. So what is zeal? What is our power of zeal? Charles Fillmore wrote in The 12 Powers, the ego, the free I, the imperishable and unchangeable essence of spirit, which humans are, causes every state of consciousness and every condition in which it functions. So zeal is the motive energy. And in case you're not familiar with this, the ego is not something we seek to get rid of. We cannot have this experience we call our human life without it. It's what allows us to have this. Now, we can determine, though, what energy we empower it with. An energy of avarice, of greed, of seeking power from other people and other places, or an energy of living a spiritual life. The ego does what we tell it to do. Zeal does not create the basic substance that enter into our thoughts. These substances have been provided from the beginning, but it gives them form and character in consciousness. Just as we build, I'm quoting Charles, just as we build houses of lumber, stone, or whatever material they may choose to manifest, we choose what materials we fill our power of zeal with, what we fill our consciousness with. And they are all constructed under the dynamic principle of the great impulse that lies back of all creation, zeal. Zeal is the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, the storms. It urges the planets on their course and spurs the ant to great exertion. Charles waxed a little poetic there. It is the impulse to go forward, the urge behind all things. Without zeal, stagnation, inertia, and death would prevail throughout the universe. So this power of zeal is not just in us, it's in everything. It is literally the power of evolution. It's a motive force. It is the power that moves us towards our own soul growth. Let me give you an example of a way zeal works through us that we may not have thought about. Why do you get up and come to Unity on Sunday mornings? Why? Is it about being part of a community? Well, that's important. We have a great community. We really do. Is it about the wonderful music? That's important. We have awesome music. That's a big part of it. Is it about the activities and the classes and the events? That's a big part of it. We have great ones. But perhaps, what motivates you to get up on a Sunday morning and come to church is because there is something in you that is pushing you to grow. Something in you that desires evolution. And so this power that we call zeal is behind all other things that make us do what we do, to evolve and to grow and to experience life to the fullest. It urges us forward, and it urges us all to become more than we have been, more than we are even right at this moment. So just in case you haven't seen the title of the talk and don't know who I chose, oh, you have, it's up there, and don't know who I chose to be the representative of the feminine energy of the power of zeal, the person I chose, her name is lost to history, but she is known as the woman of Samaria. Some of you may remember the story about the Samaritan woman who came to draw some water. And Jesus said to her, I'm quoting now, Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink of water." Now, I'm going to interject a lot in this because this is probably one of the most badly translated stories in the whole Gospels. It obviously was translated much later in history, and many pieces were left out of it. I cannot imagine a person with the personality of Jesus saying, "Give me a drink of water." He probably said, "Would you draw me some water?" The setting is he was at a well in Samaria. Now, if you know anything at all about history, Samaria was a province in Israel filled with Samaritans. They were not considered the highest class Jews of the day. In fact, they were shunned by most of the rest of the people of Israel. Why? It was because Samaria had been a capital of Israel in its early history. Kings had built their palaces there and ruled from there. Ahab and Jacob were buried there. But they had worshiped other gods. They were a trading center, especially with Damascus, so they had the Syrian gods as part of their pantheon of gods. And they weren't clear. They weren't true Jews, according to the Jews of Jerusalem. And it was not even permissible for people to go through the country of Samaria to get to another place. They would go around it. But Jesus and his disciples were on their way to teach, and Jesus said, "We're going to go through Samaria." And his disciples probably were aghast and said, "We can't go through there. They're unclean." And Jesus said, "We're going through Samaria." And then he arrives at this well, the well of Jacob it was called, and he sends his disciples away to buy food in town. Now I'm going to tell you that part right there would not be accurate, because none of them would have bought food from a grocery store in Samaria. It would not have been allowed. But that's the way they have it in the Bible. So Jesus is at the well. He doesn't have a cup or a bowl or anything to draw water with. And the woman comes to draw the water early in the morning, and he says, "May I have a drink?" And the woman replies, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan. How can you ask me for a drink?" And Jesus answered her, "If only you knew what God gives and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would ask him, and he would give you life-giving water." "Sir," the woman said, "you haven't got a bucket, and the well is deep. Where would you get that life-giving water? It was our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well. He and his sons and his flocks all drank from it. You don't claim to be greater than Jacob, do you?" Smart woman. I'm going to explain why she asked that. Jesus answered, "All who drink this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water that I will give them will never be thirsty again. For the water that I will give them will become in them a spring which will provide them with life-giving water and life eternal." Now, I wanted you to notice that I use the word them, but in the Gospels it says him. It's one of the ways we know it's a bad translation. He was talking to a woman. He would not have said him. Most scholars believe that much of this story was rewritten and added to in later years, and that some was taken out. Anyway, he says, "I have something for you. I have something that you have been seeking." And the woman replies, "Sir, give me that water. Then I will never be thirsty again, nor will I have to come here to draw water." Now, there's a perplexing part in this story where Jesus says to her, "Okay, go and call your husband and come back." Now, he did this because if he had just given her water or she had given him water and anybody else had witnessed it, they probably both would have been stoned. Because Jesus was interacting with a woman he didn't know, and worse, she was a Samaritan. But Jesus was smart. He said, "Go and call your husband." He could have gotten in big trouble for both of them, but he avoided that. She replied, "I haven't got a husband." And Jesus says, "You are right when you say you haven't got a husband. For you have been married to 5 men, and the man you live with now is not really your husband. You have told me the truth." Now, he's not reprimanding her there. He is stating what he knows. So he was aware that this woman existed before he went to the well. There's no question about that. So who was she? We don't know who she was specifically, but I can promise you that she was a woman of great wisdom, of great knowledge, probably a leader in her community. And Jesus wanted to meet her. And so he set this all up. It's pretty obvious. She replies, "I see you are a prophet. My Samaritan ancestors worshiped God on this mountain, but you Jews say that Jerusalem is the only place where we should worship God." And Jesus replied to her, "Believe me, the time will come when people will not worship the Father either on this mountain or in Jerusalem. For God is everywhere, not just in the temple." This part we know was added in later years. He says, "You Samaritans do not really know whom you worship, but we know whom we worship because it is from the Jews that salvation comes. But the time is coming and is already here when by the power of God's Spirit, people will worship the Father as he really is, offering him the true worship he wants. God is Spirit, and only by the power of Spirit can we worship God." What does that mean? To worship originally meant to take on the attributes of love, of peace, of acceptance, of equality. Take away all the later patriarchal sentences that were put into this, and you begin to discern that what Jesus was saying is, we are one. We worship Spirit, not a God determined by some group of people. We worship the light that is in every one of us. The woman replied, "I know that the Messiah will come, and when he comes, he will tell us everything." And Jesus said, "It is I who am talking with you." So despite the historical problems with the translation with this story, it is important nonetheless to realize that this woman represents zeal. She represents some power, some energy that is drawing her to the Christ, metaphysically the Christ within herself, drawing her to seek out new knowledge, new growth, new understanding. We have that same power. It's in every one of us. Something that calls us to move beyond the physical life that we live, the focus on materialism and physicality. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said, you have had 5 husbands. Who were her 5 husbands? Our 5 senses. She was her husbands, and we all go through this, where we're very much about living our physical life, interpreting the world by what we see and hear, influencing what we do by what we say. And Jesus said, but there is a higher way to live. There is a sense that you have not yet found, but I am going to tell you about it. So we all have this within us, this desire to move beyond just having things, to experiencing life, to living life, and to growing beyond. You know, this whole thing of desire often gets a bad rap because we don't understand what it's really about. It is a part of zeal, the desire for more. And when we are not in a higher place of consciousness, when we are only coming from our very human level, that desire shows up as a desire for more material possessions, a desire for power, a desire for all of the things that are of the world. But no matter how much of that we get, we're still thirsty. We still want more. It doesn't satisfy. And their desire serves a good purpose. But the real desire behind everything is our desire for soul growth, our desire to move more fully into the truth of who we are created to be. So when we become aware of that, we do feel zealous for wisdom and knowledge, and love and peace, and all of the things our soul seeks to desire. Some people say, well, that's just the movement of God. Yes, it is, but it is not all of God. It is a part of the energy of God. Like you could think of it as a ray of light of God. This desire for more, this hunger, this thirst that flows to and from us as love, substance, and intelligence. And through zeal, we seek to become aligned with that energy. If not, what have we? We still have that longing. And so we seek it in outer ways, in outer things. But to be truly living means we are strongly committed to improving ourselves. If not, we run the risk of giving up. I look around our world today at so many people who are so frustrated that have just given up. And so they seek to get power or zeal or life or whatever it is they think they are searching for from other people. I see it all too often in our world today. There's no effort towards growth. And it's not that they are lazy or bad, it's just they've forgotten that there is that desire. The woman at the well had that deep longing for spiritual growth. She had that longing to discover who she was. She was an outcast in that part of the world, she and her people. She was a woman, which also kind of counted against her in their culture. But she had that desire to discover who she was, what she was, and what she could become. And she was not afraid to connect to Spirit. What would have happened if she hadn't had that within her? If she hadn't had the zeal and the strength, when she saw Jesus at the well, she would have turned and run back to the village. Instead, she stood and engaged with him. She was not afraid to connect. She may not even have been totally aware of what it was she was really seeking, but she knew she was seeking, and she knew she was seeking something that could not be satisfied in the outer. Each of us is like her. Sometimes we know exactly what it is we are seeking in life, or at least we think we do. But do we actively and with zeal search and study? Do we take risks? Do we go where we shouldn't go? and talk to people we shouldn't talk to learn, to evolve, to study, and to practice? Or do we just hope that maybe enlightenment will come? This woman knew that she had to seek enlightenment, and she did. I love what the Ghanaian author Leila Gifty Akita wrote. Zeal without knowledge is fatal. Knowledge without zeal is fatal. But knowledge with zeal is a force of being. Are we doing or are we being? This woman at the well, she desired to be and to do. My hunch is, there's no historical record, but just reading between the lines of the story and understanding the culture of the day and how people would have interacted, my hunch is this woman went on to become a great leader in her community, if she wasn't already. She had every attribute that a great leader requires: curiosity, desire, and zeal. And she had knowledge, and she sought more knowledge. Zeal with knowledge moves us from just doing to what we have always done to becoming evolutionary people. And when we get to that state of understanding, we could say like Charles Fillmore did when he was 94 years old, I fairly zizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty effort to do that which ought to be done by me. And if you've ever heard the recording of that, 94 years old, you can hear the zeal in his voice. So my prayer for each and every one of us is that we sizzle with zeal. Thank you.
Get your troubles, come on, get happy. Got to chase all your cares away. Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready for a brand new day. The sun is shining, come on, get happy. God is waiting to take your hand. Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy. We're going to the promised land. We're heading across the river. Wash your worries away in the tide. It's so peaceful on the other side. Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. Got to